How's it going, you guys? It's Scott with Everyday Home Repairs, and today I'm going to show you the complete process of how to do a professional epoxy coating in your garage. Now, don't be mistaken, these are not the DIY kits you'll see at Home Depot. Rust-Oleum's epoxy shield is going to be your most common. I have done installation of this. I'll put a link down in the description, but this often leads to failure. And from the viewers' feedback, 33% of the viewers said that their floor using this type of kit failed within the first year. So that's not what we're looking for. This kit, kind of a DIY amount of materials, is going to be compared to that amount of materials behind me, which is your professional grade materials. And that's why our results should be superior. So let's jump right into it and start off with the number one most critical step. And that is the prep of the surface prior to putting on any primer or epoxy. So the DIY and pro, the pro side is going to do a full grind. So if you're hiring this out and somebody's not grinding the surface down to get a good scratch and fresh concrete, you're probably not hiring a professional. So just keep that in mind. And then the DIY kits often would just have you, if you had fresh concrete, they'd have you use a degreaser, scrubbing that, soaking the surface and kind of washing all the degreaser off, and then you come back with a mild acid, which is called acid etching, and you're etching that surface. This is supposed to help with the bond, but again, you're going to soak that surface down. Inherently, that's not the best. You don't want to soak down the concrete right before putting something on top of it, because the concrete can absorb some of that water, and maybe by the time you're putting on your primer or your epoxy, all that water is not out. So it's going to release later on, and then that's going to impact the bond to the surface, and you're going to have an early failure, as reported on many of the people that have used DIY kits in the past. So when it comes to a full grind, this is going to be some investment in time, and over half the project is going to be spent here. Now you can either go the purchase path, where you're buying a 4.5-inch angle grinder with a diamond cup wheel and a vacuum shroud, and possibly a 7-inch, which is going to give you more coverage area, especially if you have 500 square feet like I'm dealing with here. But remember, for your shop vac, you need a capable shop vac, but you also need a filter that is either a HEPA filter or made for concrete dust or drywall dust. Don't just get a normal filter and not put a bag within your shop vac, or your filter gets plugged within just a couple minutes and you lose all the suction to the shroud. So you're not going to be sucking up that concrete dust, and your garage is going to get covered in dust. Your other option, other than purchasing, would be to rent a walk-behind grinder. So for me, that is what I went with. I went with a dual disc gas grinder from Sunbelt, combined up with their industrial grade vacuum. So the price point for these two things is about the same. If you do not have a shop vac, you need to buy the 7-inch grinder and the 4.5-inch grinder. You're looking at an investment of about $500 to $600 to get all that equipment, including the blades and the shroud and everything. If you're going to rent for one day, you also need to get that 4.5-inch grinder, because there's going to be spots where the walk-behind grinder is not going to get in. All your edges, around little steps, and anywhere else, you need something much smaller to grind that down. So you're going to be looking for a one-day rental, and also buying that grinder, probably about a $500, $600 investment. So that's about your cost for grinding down the surface. You're going to save a ton on labor because you're doing it yourself, but just prepare yourself. This is going to take a little while to do. And I actually did a test so I could compare, hey, if I hand grind this, how long is it going to take compared to renting a dual disc? I did 25 square feet with the 7-inch angle grinder, timed that out. It took me 30 minutes to complete that. And then I did a similar 25 square feet and used the dual disc rental from Sunbelt. That only took me 7 minutes. So I would say the rental is going to be at least 4 times faster, if not more, because the grinder really is much harder on your body, so you're going to have to take more breaks and maybe stretch it out over multiple days. The advantage is you do own the equipment, so you're a lot more flexible, and then with the rental, it's going to be much, much faster, easier on the body, but obviously you're going to want to limit the amount of time you're renting that. One pro tip is, if the rental store is closed on Saturday and Sunday, you can get that grinder Friday morning and return it Monday morning, and usually only get charged for one day. So it really expands out the time with the equipment and minimizes the cost. So just keep that in mind for your own project. And you need to grind that surface whether you have epoxy like I had on this floor or it was fresh concrete. We still need to get that scratch down. If you have fresh concrete, the nice thing is it's going to go much, much faster. For me, even after I got done with the walk behind and returned that to the rental store, I still needed to go through and finish all my edges with the small grinder. I preferred to use just the 4.5-inch grinder, but also I needed to go all over the floor and remove small problem spots where there was still some additional epoxy left over. I would not want to leave that epoxy on the surface because that epoxy was actually kind of melted on the surface. It didn't have a great bond, so if I would leave that there, that would impact my final product once I started putting the new primer and epoxy on top of it. So take your time, invest the time to make sure you prep the floor correctly, and that's going to set you up for success in these next steps. After your grind, you're also going to see if you have any cracks in your floor or any spalls or chips out of your floor. Now, if you have cracks or chips, this is the time to fix those. There is a product from Concrete Floor Solutions, which is the company that's going to provide the epoxy kit that we're doing as well. And they have a really cool repair product that is also a 2-part epoxy, and it sets up extremely fast. It actually will set up in 15 minutes where you can get it on a crack or get it in that spall, and then it will dry, and then you can go back through and grind that flat and you're ready to go. So it's extremely convenient, and it's nice to have that kit ready to go because pretty much all of us are gonna have some type of cracks or chips or spalls in the floor that we're gonna need to address before we start putting on our primer. You wanna get everything as smooth as possible, or that's going to show right through even after you flake your floor. Those cracks will work themselves back out if you do not address them correctly and kind of grind those cracks out, putting in some fine sand and then putting in that 2-part epoxy so you can grind it flat. And the epoxy is going to be stronger than the original concrete. So again, do not take the shortcuts here. And then I will also point you in the description of this video. We have breakout videos on kind of each of these parts as well if you want to dive a little deeper. Our grinding is complete, we have those cracks filled, and we have any spalls or any imperfections in the floor taken care of. And if it's anything like my floor and you're grinding off epoxy coating, you know that that can take some time. So you're sitting in a good spot now. Now we want to go on to the first of 3 coatings that we'll do, but before then, make sure you go through and thoroughly vacuum your floor. It does not have to be perfectly clean, and do not wet down the surface. Again, one of the 2 main differences between a DIY kit and this one is we're keeping everything dry and we're doing that full grind to get a really good scratch on the surface. So this first coat of primer can adhere and really soak in and give us that solid layer for the intermediate coat to bond to. Now the last thing I did was just take a leaf blower and kind of blow out any of the dust, or maybe leaves came in while you were cleaning up. Just get that all off the floor. It is very warm outside for me right now. It's 97 degrees Fahrenheit. So I cannot have the garage door open during most of this installation because the working window of this epoxy floor is 55 degrees to 90 degrees Fahrenheit. If you start going up into the upper ranges of that, it's going to shorten the amount of working time that you have and lessen it below 45 minutes. So you want to keep within that window. Just remember, it might be 80 degrees Fahrenheit outside, but if you have direct sunlight on your concrete surface, that concrete surface can be well over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. So let's make sure we don't have any direct sunlight, and we try to keep that concrete somewhere around 80 degrees Fahrenheit if you can. And that's where I'm at right now because I actually have air coming from the house to cool down, and also a window AC unit to keep this space a little bit cooler to make sure I don't get into those 90 degrees, which can also start to promote bubbling in the coating as it goes through the curing cycle. So the products we'll be working with is we'll have some spiked shoes so we can work on the floor while we're actually applying the primer, intermediate, and clear coat. The 3 different products, we'll start off with the primer, and you'll see there's this 5-gallon pail, but it has 2 parts within it that we'll be mixing together. Here is our mixer that we'll be using to mix that up for about 2 minutes to make sure it's completely mixed. We'll apply the primer. Once the primer is done, we go on to our intermediate coat. Both of these are in medium gray. Again, we have 2 parts within here. I have about 50 pounds of flake, and I'll show you exactly which one that is, just in case you like that color combination. In terms of squeegees, we have a notched squeegee here, and that's going to be for your primer and your intermediate coat. And those little notches allow you, when you're sliding that across the floor, it leaves behind the exact amount of product that you want. And then for the clear coat, since we'll have a flake on top of the intermediate, and that's going to be a rough surface, you just have the flat squeegee here because you'll be pulling the clear coat across, and then that clear coat works into the cracks and crevices around the flake. And then once you squeegee that down, you're going to be working with a small 6-inch, 3/8 of an inch nap roller with a handle, and then a big 18-inch, 1/4-inch nap roller, which will really allow you to quickly roll the entire surface, in addition to a cheap paintbrush just to get those hard to get areas and make sure you have coverage. And then finally, I'll be using some aluminum oxide from Concrete Floor Solutions to help us make sure that we do not have a slick floor. So this is non-skid additive. That is added to your clear coat. This is one of the 4 gallons that I have in the kit that we'll be applying last. And while we apply that, I will be wearing a respirator because there is quite a bit of fumes that will come off the clear coat. And then you'll see a link right below the video in the description. And what we're using is the 500 square foot complete epoxy flake floor kit. Now there's several different options here. So at least I can walk you through exactly the ones that I'm getting. Now, when it came to the color, remember, we're going to be using medium gray. So if you like that color, that's the one we're using. A ton of different flake options. We are using the 411 Domino, which I understand is one of the most popular. It's going to be the 1/4-inch size flake. We went with the full flake, so 50 pounds of flake. The clear coat's going to be the 4 gallons of the single component. And then again, we got 1 pint of the aluminum oxide. We want to add that to our cart. And also, if you do not want to grab all the roller squeegee, the spike shoes, everything else, you can get the kits from them. So it all comes and you're ready to go. Specifically, the one that I was using is the light duty. If you had multiple people working, maybe you'd go up to the medium duty, but then you'll view your cart at checkout and they were able to give us a 10% discount. So you just do EHR 10 and apply that coupon, and then that's going to give you 10% at checkout to bring that cost down. Now, starting off with the primer, we're going to do 2 parts of the part B here in the first bucket, and that's got the actual tint to it. Let that drain out. It's going to take a little bit longer to drain. Don't necessarily have to make a mess like I did right there, but that's also why I have the rosin paper down. And then the part A, it's only gonna be 1 gallon. So it's a 2-to-1 mixture. You're gonna pour that in. And then for 2 minutes, we're gonna want to mix. And if you got the accessory kit, you'll have this mixer with you, or you can grab one at Home Depot. Spend most of your time down at the bottom of the bucket, making sure you're working everything low, and then kind of work your way up at a setting speed of 1. Do not go too fast. You just wanna get a good mix. Once you have that, you'll take the product in and you'll start to pour 3 to 6-inch ribbons, or if you're a newbie like me, it's gonna be super inconsistent like that, and you're gonna have to do a little bit more work with your squeegee. So you have your notched squeegee, that's how you're gonna distribute the product out, and that's gonna leave behind just the right amount. And then you're gonna use that 6-inch roller, that's how I'm doing my edges. And then your 18-inch roller is how you're gonna get everything smooth. Now I use that 18-inch roller quite a bit, even to spread out the product. When if you were a true pro and had some experience, you'd be using that squeegee, spreading out and distributing your product, and then going back through with your roller and just making sure everything is laid out consistently. Or if you're a 2-person operation, maybe you split it up. 1 person's doing the squeegee and the other person is doing the roller. I use this roller to spread it out a little bit. And here's a look at the 6-inch, just doing an edge. Now I have an expansion joint there. The floor was poured independent of the foundation, so there's an expansion joint between the two. I'm just gonna go up to the expansion joint. If you're going up the wall a little bit, make sure you leave more of a ribbon of product so you'll have that to work up the wall. And then again, I'll spread out a little bit with the squeegee, and then I'll start using that 18-inch roller and kind of pushing the product towards the garage door here. and make sure I have enough. Now I just had enough for this 500 square foot, so the 500 square foot kit actually did match up to my garage, and there was enough product. Then you'll take that paintbrush, do all your final touches, making sure you have product everywhere you need it, and here's what mine looked like at the end, so we'll let it set up and start to dry. Don't forget, once you're done with the first primer coat, use some acetone and clean out that notched squeegee, because we're going to need that for the intermediate coat as well, so you want to make sure it's clean. Now moving on to intermediate coat, the mixing's the same. 2 minutes, and that's 2 parts of A, 1 part of B. You'll lay it out in ribbons like this. Hopefully yours are a little bit more consistent than mine were. Then you'll use that same notched squeegee, and the notches will allow you to have the correct and uniform distribution of material on your floor as you work it across. I was a little light in that corner, so I went and grabbed some extra, which was in the bucket. So I did this in half and half. This is at nighttime. I'm working off that. I know I have about 45 minutes to work this material before it starts to get a little stickier and harder to work with. So I want to finish up this floor at about 30-35 minutes, and then I'll start to flake. So I worked that 18-inch roller on the first half, getting the uniform distribution, working it back and forth, not rolling too fast so the product doesn't fling around and go all over everything. And then I do wet up that 6-inch roller. Make sure you wet up your 18-inch and your 6-inch roller to make sure there's product on those rollers prior to rolling, or it's going to be a little bit hard to get that spread until you have product on the roller. So I'll continue to squeegee the second half, kind of finishing that off, and then going back and doing some of my edges, including the one step I have here right at the front. So I'm working the 6-inch roller, and then I also work that paintbrush a little bit, getting into the nooks and crannies that even the 6-inch roller can get into. Once I have all my edges for the front half, then I'll finish off the 18-inch roller on that second half, making sure I have enough product all the way across. And then once I have everything complete, I'll start to move kind of the tools off the floor, and we'll work towards the front edge. Now you haven't seen much on the front edge, but I do have to lift the garage door. Remember, it's nighttime out, so I have a fair amount of bugs out that I'd like to reduce them getting on the floor. But I need to work this front edge because this is where the tires will hit. So I need to make sure there's prime, intermediate coat, and clear coat in addition to the flakes on this front edge, so it's durable versus the tires from the vehicles coming in. And then I'll go on to flaking. Now I'm doing a very heavy or full flake. Now I'm trying to get on the side of the step there. That's why I'm throwing the flakes like this. But usually you'll just throw the flakes up into the air. If you're doing a full flake like this, it's going to be easy because you're getting flakes everywhere at a uniform distribution. If you're doing a light or medium flake, it's a little bit harder because if you drop one clump of flakes on the floor, it looks inconsistent, especially if you're doing a light flake. So I'm just going back and forth, and you'll just want to make sure you're stepping flat-footed with those spiked shoes. Don't be sliding on the floor, especially if you're walking back over the flakes, which you can do if you need to go back and spread a little bit more flake. But you do not want to slide on that floor or you're going to have an issue. So make sure it's flat-footed on all your movements and they have your balance. And I'll finish up here. I used about 30 pounds of flake across this 500 square foot. I'll just go back in a few of the different places, making sure we have the full flake and get that outside edge as well. So I let the intermediate layer set up for about 16 hours. It's the next day, and we're on to really our last step. First off, I'm just going to put a pinch of this aluminum oxide to give us the non-skid feature of the floor. Just a little pinch every about 4 square foot area, just going across the floor. And once it hits the ground, that pinch will just kind of bounce and disperse throughout. And really the distribution of that non-skid granules will come when we do the 18-inch and the 6-inch roller. Once you're rolling that out, then that will spread it throughout your entire floor. So we have that non-skid and reduce of chances of any slipping. Now we are using the single compound for the polyaspartic coating, the top coating, so there's no mixing. I'm just going to pop the top here, and 1 gallon at a time, I'll go ahead and squeegee that gallon out, and then I'll roll that out and use the brush and the 6-inch roller to get all the detail spots, and then we'll work our way across the floor. I think it's going to use about 3 gallons, but I'll let you know once we're completed. And then that is the final step. I'll let it dry and then show you the final results. I'm already seeing a massive difference between this level of product and what you're gonna get compared to those DIY kits. There's really no comparison. I think you're gonna agree when you see the final product. Now you're only gonna use a fraction of this container of aluminum oxide to even cover this whole 500 square foot. It really doesn't take much. And then I'll take 1 gallon of the top coat, and I'm gonna work 1 gallon at a time, so I only pour out the amount of material that I need. No mixing, so it's super easy. And I'll take a squeegee, and this is not the notched squeegee. This is just a flat squeegee because it's spreading it in the cracks around the flakes. Right now you have somewhat of a texture with the flake, especially if you went with a heavier full flake. I'll kind of do my edges with that 6-inch roller, and also make sure I have it all over the stair. Any of those edges, you want to make sure you have a good coat of clear coat on. Maybe you'll be pulling dollies or something up into that. You'll be stepping on it every single day. So we'll get a little bit of work, and we'll do the same thing to kind of that front lip at the front of the garage. And then just take a brush, filling in any of the spots that I missed. Now my second gallon, I actually only am gonna use about 2.5 gallons. And I'm gonna have to move to the outside here in a second because I'm gonna run out of space for my camera. So squeegee spreading that out, and then I just went through and rolled again like you saw in the first gallon. Now this is the third gallon, but again, I only used about 2.5 gallons, and I'm just working along with the paintbrush, getting a nice coat of clear coat on that edge. So then I let the floor dry for 24 hours. After 12 hours, I did crack the garage door, at least open a little bit, and ran a fan to try to get some of the fumes out. At least with the clear coat that I'm using, it puts off a lot of fumes during the drying process. So it's good to kind of air out through the garage so it doesn't really come into your house. So try to avoid the mistake I made. I hung up my roller, which I thought wouldn't drip at all. There's no drips coming off it. Well, during the clear coat drying process, tons of the clear coat dripped off. So I found that the next morning. Luckily enough, it wasn't fully set up, and I was actually able to use a chisel and kind of work up all the extra clear coat that had dripped down underneath the roller. So get the rollers off, throw them away, do not hang them on the floor because they might just drip like they did on mine. So other than cleaning up that mess, I just used my shop vac to clean up the extra flakes, and also did just a little bit of grinding to get a nice clean edge between the epoxy coating coming over that front lip and the concrete going out into the driveway. So overall, I am very happy with this product, and it is substantially better than the DIY kit. I don't really even think you can compare them. That is one from the superior materials, but also from that prep process. Comparing the degreaser and acid etching compared to a full grind, again, really no comparison. The full grind is gonna win every single time. Let me know down in the comments, what do you guys think? Is it worth the extra money to go with this professional grade product, or are you gonna stick with the Rust-Oleum products? If you need a little bit more help because you want to take on this project, I have more videos that will dive deeper. If you need help on large cracks and how to fill those in with that rapid set epoxy, check out this video right here. We'll walk you through the full process that I just did less than a year back. If you need help with little chips or spalls, check out this video right here. It's a quick one, uses that same product, and just shows you the little bit of work you got to put in to get that fixed in as little as 15 minutes. And then if you do want to dive deeper in the DIY Rust-Oleum, so now you can compare and contrast, you can check out this video right here where I tested out the top 2 Rust-Oleum products on this exact floor so you can compare apples to apples. So thanks for joining me on this video, and we'll catch you on the next one. Take care.